Welcome to the Mental Advantage Podcast. Whether you're an athlete trying to perform at your best when it counts the most, a coach or business leader trying to get more out of your team, or someone looking for more personal growth, this is the place for you. This podcast is your map to guide you to the right mindset, systems, and strategies you need to become the best version of yourself. And now, here's John Cullen and Brandon Allen.
All right, Brandon, good to see you again. I hope you've enjoyed that 2-week break that we just took. I don't know. I know the listeners probably sure did.
Absolutely. And speaking of seeing each other, I think one of the reasons we were gone, right, is to kind of regroup and give the listeners an opportunity to see a little more of us on some of the social platform.
Absolutely. Like Brandon mentioned, guys, it's kind of the reason, and we meant to have a show right before we took that 2-week hiatus. But our producer was actually out of town. And so it really cuts into our ability to edit and launch the show is when the person who does that all the time for us, my son, Mac, is nowhere to be found. That kind of puts a little bit of a crimp into our ability to do that. So we weren't able to send that show out that we had talked about actually on the one of our last shows that we did right before the break. But we did, as Brandon mentioned, want to kind of think about it almost as a relaunch, because one of the things that we have discovered as we've gotten into this, and we're coming up on show 50, which is incredible. And thank you all for listening all of these times. But one of the things that we realized is we probably don't engage with you guys enough on social media. So this is going to be a chance for us to start showing more video clips, which may or may not be a good thing. It could be one of those things. They were like, no, I think we were good. We liked it better when it was just the audio.
You definitely have a face for being behind the mic, not in front of the camera.
Yeah. Well, finally, people will be writing into the show. Could you guys go back to not being on the Instagram and YouTube and all of that? But
well, we've heard it before, right? So we may hear it some more of, I didn't think that's what y'all look like.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. It's so funny because JT Heenan, when we interviewed him, that was one of the first things that he said was, "Oh, you guys you look a little bit different than you sounded," or something like that, which is really something we hadn't thought about until that point, is that nobody had seen the faces behind the microphone, so to speak, which again,
right.
That was for you all. That was doing you a favor.
Well, with some of that's going to happen, plus with some of the guests we have coming up, it was a good couple of weeks off, and we're coming back out, kind of firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, absolutely. We have guys. This is going to be a great week coming up for Brandon and I, because we get an opportunity to sit and talk with China McCarney, who's the founder of Athletes Against Anxiety and Depression Foundation. If you remember, you probably first heard China's name on this show during the Alan Jaeger interview, because China is actually the vice president of Jaeger Sport. So he works with Alan a good bit. And during that, we had talked about the mental, manual. And it was one of those things that as we started finding out about this foundation, Athletes Against Anxiety and Depression Foundation, that China founded, we knew right away we wanted to get him on the show, and he was kind enough to agree to do that. And then on Thursday, for us, we'll post this show on Friday. We get an opportunity that we've been looking forward to for a long time to reconnect with one of our great friends and former college teammate, Scott Foxhall, who is the pitching coach at Mississippi State, who is just coming off of their national championship in baseball from earlier this summer.
Yeah, not a bad summer for Fox. So, and what's crazy is it feels like They just got done, and I know that they are already back at it. So we talk about it a lot on the show. It is a grind, both physically and mentally. So I'm really excited to talk to China and to Scott, and just kind of get caught up. And what's going to be really interesting, and we've talked about this off mic, is the things that as a pitching coach you have to do, and especially for a pitching coach where for our listeners, Notre Dame came in to play Mississippi State in Starkville, and it was a 2 out of 3 series. And in the first 2 games in Starkville, there were more fans at those 2 games than Notre Dame had played in front of the entire year. Wow. And so, as a pitching coach, you've really got about 30 seconds before that umpire is going to come up and bust up the rock pile, right? And so you've got to be very succinct with what you've got to say, and very quick on getting the pitcher mentally back to green. And it'll be really good to catch up with Scott.
And it's interesting because you and I have talked about this, but Fox is one of those guys that when we played together at the College of Charleston, he was always so steady. You talk about players that just don't get too caught up in the highs and don't get too caught up in the lows. And Fox was one of those that was just always, it always kind of reminded me, and I've used this analogy before, of like an Oral Hershiser who's just like Absolutely. That quiet, like competitor. But the other thing I was thinking, Brandon, and is that, there are lots of guys that we've played baseball with, not just at the College of Charleston, but just back to high school and different places, summer leagues and things like that. And some of those guys, if you heard later on down the road, like, oh, so-and-so is a coach now, you'd be like, oh, really? Like, oh, okay, that's interesting or whatever. But Fox is one of those that honestly, I think if I had heard he wasn't going into coaching, I would have been more surprised, like, because he just had that kind of about him.
Well, he was, I think his demeanor was built for it. He was always a real cerebral guy on the mound. You knew you were going to have someone. There was never a game that you thought, well, we don't have a shot today, right? If Fox is on the mound, you knew you had a shot. Could place it where he wanted to, and I agree with you. He is one of the few guys that goes along with the other end of the spectrum, like you said, where if you told me they were coaching, I would just say, well, I didn't know there was a softball league in the Department of Corrections at this point. So he's a great guy, great competitor. Mississippi State's very, very fortunate to have him, and we're very fortunate to have him on the show.
Yeah. And, it's funny. You didn't need a whole lot of run production on the days that Fox was pitching. Like, that was the thing I remember too, was 1-2 was going to do it. Like, it wasn't going to, that ERA never really climbed that far.
No, but I don't know that Fox
he would never agree with that. Yeah.
I don't think he'd agree. And I don't remember Fox ever getting a ton of run support, quite honestly, because, he was our number one. So, he's as that Friday starter, you're going against the other team's Friday starter. And so those are usually, 2-1, 3-2, 4-3 games. And you had to have a guy like him on the mound that was just kind of a bulldog out there. So it'll be great to have him on.
Absolutely. And speaking of Charleston, we have a guest that's going to be joining us next week. Actually, your name is Nina Sossaman Pogue. we knew her as Nina Sossman when we first probably were around her. She was the anchor. Actually, at the time, she wasn't even an anchor when we were in school. She was probably just got there as a reporter in Charleston at one of the news stations there. TV2 actually was the news station, because I did an internship there when I was in college. And Nina is now the author of a book, This Is Not the End, which is strategies to get you through the worst chapters of your life. She's a keynote speaker. She's got her own podcast called This Seriously Sucks. And really, I mean, I've been listening some different things that Nina's been doing in preparation for that show. And really, unbelievable story. I mean, talk about somebody who you see and are around a lot. I just always remembered her as that reporter that was very enthusiastic and smiling and engaging and stuff, and former gymnast at LSU, but talks about some of the things that and I can't wait to hear the rest of this or have her tell the rest of this. But I mean, she had an opportunity to be on the Olympic team. I mean, so this is somebody who wasn't just your average gymnast. But I can't wait for the listeners to hear her story and have her talk about some of the strategies of just resilience and just bouncing back and coming back from some of these really challenging times in your life.
Yeah, having a couple of weeks off and coming back with China, Fox, and Nina, it'll be great for the listeners. It'll be great for us, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. So, guys, we are going to ask you to get, as we start to try to become more engaged with you all via social media, we're going to ask you all to get more engaged with us as well. You've done a good job with using the email address podcast@mentaladvantage.net. You've heard us, I should say, read some of those letters on the air and answer those questions. But we'd love to hear what kinds of things you all would like to see from a social media aspect that us do. We plan on putting out, like we said, some video clips and some different things like that. We've also talked about doing some live streaming, whether that be through YouTube, because there's a pretty nice following on YouTube of folks who listen to the show. And if you've not done that, if you're a regular listener to this show and you've not pulled up the YouTube channel, go and search Mental Advantage Podcast on the YouTube. I sound like I'm 80 years old. On the YouTube.
All you got to do is add an S at the end of it, buddy, and you have put yourself smack dab into a retirement home. I'm going down to the Kroger's, and I'm going to use the Googles.
Yes. So I'm actually going to go and drink a nice cup of hot tea after that, and try to wind down with some Andy Griffith after I made that comment. But it is something that we like the idea of doing something live to where we can kind of engage with some folks and get some questions on the air and see what that's all about, because that would be pretty fun.
Yeah, that would be great, and I love the idea of potentially having kind of doing a stream that we record and line up a couple of guests to or a couple of listeners to participate. That'd be a lot of fun.
So we're we just wanted to jump on tonight. We don't really have a ton of stuff for you all today, as you can tell today, other than great guests coming up. But we wanted to just get on and let you hear us again and realize that nothing's happened to us. We've just been gone for 2 weeks, but we are excited for the guests that are coming. And we've got some other guests that we just can't talk about right now that we're still kind of in those discussions with, that are really, I mean, I'm telling you right now, and we've said it before, not only the level of guests we've had, but the level of guests that are coming is amazing. And we are also thinking about doing for our 50th show, not to put any pressure on Mac as he's listening to this, is a best of, which will be really fun for him to go back through.
Well,
what'd you say it was? Like how many hours?
Really short too. It's a best of. You got 50 shows. We need 3 minutes. Good luck.
And And in that best of, your spoiler alert, you won't hear Brandon and I's voice at all.
Yeah. No, if it's the best of, it's going to be all the guests.
Yeah, because we are definitely just the thing that gets in their way. But but hopefully we'll be able to get that out for show number 50. And we can't thank you guys enough for the support. And speaking of support, and this just made my day, is a friend of mine, Pete Curry, who you've heard me talk about plenty of times, sent me a text today and was like, "What's up with the podcast? Like, I've been using this on my runs, and now you guys are missing in action for 2 weeks." And that was probably one of those text messages that he's just kind of sending out like, "Hey, quick question," but made my day, because that's the kind of support we really appreciate, is those. And there's been plenty of those folks who have been with us from day one and just watch the show grow, if you will.
Absolutely. We appreciate everybody listening.
Sounds good. Well, guys, listen, we will talk to you on Friday, as you'll hear from Scott Foxhall. I really encourage you to listen to that one, because as Brandon said, you're going to really get into some behind the scenes information on what exactly goes on during those 30-second visits to the mound, where, that pitching coach has to gain attention and get a quick message across. And there's a lot to be done. And 30 seconds goes by really fast, because we've walked up to the mound. Anytime you get pulled in, that's the other thing, is anytime the coach comes in, he's like bringing everybody in. I mean, there's always that point you're like, oh my gosh, like,
there's a little pucker factor going on. Yeah.
I don't want to go up there. Yeah. Cause usually that's during one of those innings where, when you feel like you have to get everybody involved, that's a challenging inning.
Yeah. That's probably not where you want to be.
Yeah. So anyhow, but that's going to be coming up on Friday. So thank you all for your patience in waiting these last 2 weeks. And don't forget, podcast@mentaladvantage.net with any questions, and we will make sure, or suggestions, and we'll make sure to cover those on future shows.
Looks good. Great seeing you, bud.
Want to provide feedback or stay up to date with the show? Visit our Instagram page at Mental Advantage Podcast, or you can send us an email at podcast@mentaladvantage.net. To have John Cullen work with you or your team, please write to him at john.cullen@mentaladvantage.net. Thanks for listening to today's episode.